The day had started quietly inside the elegant restaurant that stood at the corner of a busy street. The morning rush had passed, leaving behind a calm warmth and the sound of soft music playing through hidden speakers. The staff moved in a smooth rhythm, cleaning tables, polishing glasses, and preparing for the lunch crowd. Among them was a woman named Isla, dressed in a neat uniform, her hair tied back in a simple style. She carried herself with a peaceful confidence, the kind that came from knowing she belonged in that space, even if most people had no idea who she really was. To the public, she was just another waitress. Someone who brought plates to tables, asked customers how their meals tasted, and quietly stepped aside as they moved through their busy lives. But the truth was far from that. She was the one who made this restaurant what it was. The design, the recipes, the way the staff treated customers. Every detail carried her touch. She was not only the co-owner but also the legal wife of the man the public knew as a charming and successful businessman. A man named Rayhan. Their relationship, however, was intentionally private. No photos online, no public appearances, no flashy talk. Only the people closest to them knew the truth, and they protected it closely. Isla had chosen to work on the floor as a simple waitress, not because she needed to, but because it helped her stay grounded. She believed that a place only stayed strong when the one running it understood the people working inside it. Every day, she learned more about her employees, her customers, and even about herself. She listened to the small conversations, the little problems, the compliments, the complaints, kept her honest, kept her connected. Around noon, the calm atmosphere shifted. The front doors opened, and the receptionist's polite smile turned slightly tense, the way it always did when a certain couple walked in. Rayhan entered first, well-dressed, confident, easygoing, and right beside him was Lena, the woman he had been bringing around for the past months. She was strikingly beautiful, always dressed in the latest fashion, always holding her chin high, and always expecting the world to bend around her. From the moment she stepped inside any place, the air changed. She liked attention. She lived on it. Conversations often paused for a moment when she entered, not because people admired her alone, but because her presence demanded space. She carried herself like someone who believed the world owed her special treatment. The receptionist quickly guided them to their table, one of the best in the restaurant. The staff exchanged quiet glances as they passed by. They knew how demanding the pair could be, especially Lena. They knew how she spoke to people, how she sometimes behaved like the staff existed only to make her feel powerful. But the staff also knew that Isla would never allow anyone to be mistreated. Not while she was around. Still, she liked to observe first. She believed that people showed their real nature when they thought no one important was watching. Today, Isla was working close to the section where the couple had been seated. As soon as she saw them, she already sensed the tension. She offered a gentle smile to the hostess and took the order pad from the counter. She didn't mind serving them. She had served many people like them before, people who judged a person by their uniform and not by their heart. Isla walked to their table with calm, steady steps. She greeted them politely, asking if they needed a moment with the menu. Rayhan looked up with a faint smile. He knew Isla well, though he had gotten used to pretending he didn't. It was an odd feeling to sit across from his own wife in public and act like she was a stranger. But they had chosen this life. They believed privacy mattered more than public display. Lena, however, barely looked at Isla before sighing deeply, as if she had already spotted a problem. "Can you hurry up?" she said, waving her hand slightly without making eye contact. "We're in a bit of a rush." Isla nodded calmly. "Of course, take your time. I'm here whenever you're ready." Her gentle tone only annoyed Lena further. She didn't like soft-spoken people. She believed confidence meant loudness, boldness, and control. Quiet people made her uncomfortable because she couldn't predict them. Isla stepped aside politely while they looked through the menu. She kept her expression polite, but she noticed Lena staring at her, studying her clothes, her shoes, her hairstyle. Judging silently, the restaurant started to fill up. Families came in with children, co-workers gathered at tables after long meetings, and elderly couples enjoyed their slow conversations. The energy grew warm again, but at Rayhan and Lena's table, tension continued to simmer. A few minutes later, Isla returned to take their order. She stood patiently, her pen ready. Lena finally put down the menu and looked up fully. Her expression shifted into the kind that suggested she had already decided she didn't like the person standing in front of her. "Do you even know the ingredients in this dish?" she asked with a slight smirk. "Or do I need someone more capable?" A few nearby customers glanced in their direction. Her tone was sharp enough for others to hear. Isla maintained her calm expression. "I know the menu very well," she replied softly. "Feel free to ask anything." Lena tilted her head and leaned back in her chair, clearly enjoying the moment of superiority. "All right then," she said. "Explain the difference between this and the similar dish on the next page." Isla explained the ingredients, cooking method, and seasoning differences in a simple, precise way. She didn't rush. She didn't sound unsure. She spoke the way someone would speak about something they helped create. Rayhan looked down at the menu, hiding the small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. He knew exactly what Lena was doing, and he knew she wasn't going to win whatever silent game she thought she was playing. But Lena wasn't satisfied with Isla's calm. She wanted a reaction. She said, pretending to think. "Did someone teach you all of that? Or did you memorize it so you don't get fired?" The words slipped into the air like a blade. A few tables away, a group of co-workers exchanged uncomfortable looks. Isla's expression didn't change. "I work closely with the menu. I understand it well," she said simply. Her steady tone only irritated Lena more. "So you're trying to say you're better than the rest of the staff?" Lena said, crossing her arms. "No," Isla replied quietly. "I'm simply here to help." That answer made Lena scoff. Rayhan finally cleared his throat softly. "Let's just place the order," he said, hoping to dissolve the tension. He ordered a simple meal, and Lena followed with something more complicated, making sure to add several unnecessary instructions just to test Isla's patience. When Isla left the table, other staff members watched her closely. One of them whispered, "Do you want me to switch sections with you?" Isla shook her head with a gentle smile. "It's all right," she said. "Let's just do our work." She didn't want anyone else subjected to Lena's attitude. And deep down, she already sensed that something bigger was unfolding. Something that would reveal who people truly were. As she walked back to the kitchen, she felt the weight of eyes on her. Some were curious, some concerned, some admiring her calm posture. But Isla moved like she always did, with quiet strength. Meanwhile, back at the table, Lena watched her walk away with narrowed eyes. "I don't like her," she said sharply. "She walks like she owns the place or something." Rayhan looked up, startled by how close she had come to the truth. He stayed silent, not sure how to respond without revealing anything. Lena continued talking, not noticing the discomfort she brought wherever she went. People like her always try to act smart. Someone needs to put her in her place. Little did Lena know, she had already stepped into a story she wasn't prepared for. A story where the woman she looked down on was not just a waitress but someone whose dignity could not be shaken, no matter how many insults were thrown her way. And the day had only just begun. The kitchen was warm with the sound of sizzling pans and the steady rhythm of cooks moving from station to station. Isla stood near the counter while the chef prepared the dishes for the couple's table. She kept her posture relaxed, though inside she felt a quiet heaviness. Moments like these always reminded her of how differently people behaved when they thought someone had no power. She had seen it many times, customers looking down on the uniform instead of the person wearing it. But today felt different. Maybe because the disrespect had been so open, so careless, or maybe because it had come from someone sitting beside her own husband. Still, Isla pushed her thoughts aside. She believed every situation taught her something, even uncomfortable ones. She poured water into 2 glasses and prepared a tray while the chef continued cooking. Around her, the staff whispered softly, their eyes filled with sympathy and frustration. "She really went too far," one of the cooks muttered quietly without looking up from his pan. Isla offered a soft smile. "It's all right, let's just focus on work." The cook nodded, though his expression didn't hide his anger. Everyone in the restaurant respected Isla. She never raised her voice, never looked down on anyone, and never acted like she was above anyone. Even though she owned everything they touched, she always treated the staff like partners, not employees. That made them protective of her, sometimes even more than she expected. Once the food was ready, Isla placed the dishes on her tray and walked toward the dining area. She moved with the same calm grace she always had, but she could feel eyes following her from different corners. Some customers had witnessed the earlier exchange. People were quiet, pretending to focus on their meals while secretly waiting to see what would happen next. When Isla reached the table, Rayhan looked up first. His expression was polite but tense. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something supportive, but he stopped himself. The balance he tried to maintain between his private truth and his public image made him choose silence instead. Lena, on the other hand, leaned back in her chair with an impatient sigh. "Finally," she said, "I thought I would grow old waiting." Isla placed the dishes gently on the table without reacting. She checked that everything was correct and stepped back one small step, ready to ask if they needed anything else. Before she could say a word, Lena leaned toward her plate with narrowed eyes. "Is this supposed to be the dish I ordered?" Isla looked at it calmly. "Yes, it is. The chef prepared it exactly as requested." Lena lifted her fork and poked the food dramatically, as if she were testing whether it was real. Several customers nearby pretended not to be listening, but their ears were alert. "Are you sure?" Lena said. "It doesn't look anything like the picture." Isla glanced at the menu. The dish was identical. She had watched the chef prepare it carefully. Still, she kept her voice gentle. "The picture only shows the standard version. Yours has the extra instructions you added. That's why it looks a little different." For a moment, she thought the explanation would settle things. But Lena wasn't looking for an explanation. She was looking for a reason to criticize. "So, you're blaming me now?" Lena said, her voice loud enough for the restaurant to hear. "You're saying I ruined the dish with my instructions?" Isla stood quietly, not wanting the situation to escalate. "No, not at all," she said. "I'm just explaining why it looks different." Rayhan looked uncomfortable again. He knew Lena was pushing things unnecessarily, but he didn't know how to stop her without causing a scene. He rubbed his forehead lightly, a small gesture Isla recognized from years of knowing him. It was a sign he was frustrated but trying to keep himself composed. Lena, however, wasn't finished. "You know what? Just take it back," she said sharply. "I don't want it anymore." Isla gently picked up the plate. "Would you like to order something else?" "Well, obviously," Lena snapped. "Unless you expect me to sit here and watch him eat." Rayhan set his fork down slowly. "Maybe we should." But before he could finish, Lena cut him off again. "No, I want another dish. And make sure it's right this time." Isla nodded politely. "What would you like instead?" Lena flipped through the menu again, though it was clear she wasn't really reading it. She finally pointed to another dish without looking up. "This, and don't mess it up." Isla wrote it down quietly and walked back to the kitchen. As she stepped away, Rayhan tried to speak in a low tone. "You don't have to talk to her like that. She should learn to do her job," Lena replied, not lowering her voice at all. "Maybe then people wouldn't complain." Rayhan sighed but remained silent. He knew any argument with Lena would turn into something bigger, something loud, something messy. And he wasn't ready for that. Not in a crowded restaurant. Not with Isla standing only a few steps away. When Isla returned to the kitchen, the chef stared at the returned plate with visible displeasure. "But it's correct," he said firmly. "I know," Isla replied. "Would you mind preparing the new one?" "Of course not," the chef said, softening. "But I hate seeing you treated like this." Isla offered her usual gentle smile. "It will pass. Let's just finish the order." The kitchen resumed its rhythm, though everyone felt the same heaviness Isla did. While waiting, she stepped aside near the storage shelf to take a breath. She wasn't angry, but she felt a quiet sadness. Not because of the words spoken to her, but because she wondered how often people like Lena treated others the same way. without thinking for even a second about the person in front of them. After a few minutes, the new dish was ready. Isla carried the tray again and returned to the table. As soon as she reached it, Lena looked up with an exaggerated expression, as if she expected another mistake. "Is it correct this time?" she said. "It should be," Isla replied calmly. Lena inspected it for a long moment, then finally lifted her fork. She took one bite, then paused. She muttered. "It's fine." Isla nodded politely. "I'm glad you like it. But," Lena continued loudly, "you took too long. Good service shouldn't make people wait." Isla didn't respond to the remark. She simply asked, "Is there anything else you need?" "No," Lena said sharply. "Just don't disappear." Isla stepped back quietly. She could feel the eyes of the room again. Some were sympathetic, some upset, some amazed at how gracefully she handled everything. A few minutes passed. Isla tended to other tables, refilled drinks, cleared plates, offered warm smiles. Every customer she approached greeted her with kindness, but she could sense the lingering tension in the air. The earlier scene had unsettled people. Later, as she passed by the couple's table again, she noticed Lena's expression shift. Lena placed her glass on the table a little too hard and frowned. "Excuse me," she called out sharply. "There's barely any water in here." Isla walked over and refilled the glass gently. "Do you always move this slowly?" Lena said with a small smirk. "Or is it just with us?" Isla's hands paused only for a second. She finished pouring the water, then set the jug down calmly. "I'll make sure to check on you more often," she said softly. "No need to sound offended," Lena replied, though she was clearly trying to provoke her. "I'm just helping you improve." Isla nodded and stepped back once more. At a nearby table, a family sat watching the scene unfold. The mother whispered to her husband, "How can she speak like that to someone?" Their teenage daughter glanced at Isla, her expression filled with quiet respect. "I don't know how she stays so calm." Isla continued moving around the restaurant, doing her job as if nothing were wrong. But inside, she felt the weight of every word Lena had thrown at her. Not because the insults hurt her personally, but because it reminded her of something she had believed for years. You can tell who someone truly is by the way they treat people who cannot offer them anything. Lena was proving that truth with every passing minute. Meanwhile, Rayhan sat in silence, watching the situation unfold in a way he hadn't expected. He knew Isla was strong, stronger than anyone gave her credit for. But seeing her treated this way made something tighten in his chest. He tried to calm Lena subtly with soft glances and quiet reminders, but nothing worked. Lena was determined to assert control, even if it meant pushing someone else down. As the minutes passed, the atmosphere around the table grew more tense. Isla sensed it, the staff sensed it, and even some customers felt it. Something was shifting in the air, something quiet but powerful. She didn't know what it was yet, but she felt it building, like a tide rising slowly. The day was not over, and Lena hadn't said her worst words yet. Isla braced herself for what was coming next, though no expression on her face showed it. The lunch hour grew busier as more people entered the restaurant, filling the room with the soft sound of conversations and clinking cutlery. Despite the normal atmosphere around her, Isla could feel the quiet pressure building near one table, the table where Lena sat, still looking restless, as if she were searching for the next thing to complain about. Isla moved through the room with her usual gentle steps. She served tea to an older couple, laughed softly at a child who proudly announced he could tie his own shoelaces, and helped a group of coworkers take a photo together. These small interactions always warmed her heart. They reminded her why she loved working on the floor, why she chose to be close to people instead of staying in an office upstairs where no one saw her face. But every time she glanced toward the corner where Rayhan and Lena sat, she felt a small knot in her chest. Not fear, not anger, just a quiet sadness. Sadness that came from watching someone treat others as if kindness cost too much. Lena tapped her fingers against the table, her irritation growing with every passing second. She didn't like being ignored, even when no one was ignoring her. She simply wanted attention, and she wanted it in the form of obedience. Rayhan noticed her mood worsening. He leaned slightly toward her. "You could just enjoy the meal," he suggested softly. "The food is good. The atmosphere is nice." Lena didn't hide the annoyance in her expression. "I could enjoy it," she replied sharply. "If your staff knew how to treat customers properly." Rayhan closed his mouth. He knew trying to reason with her would only push her further. Isla finally approached their table again to ask if everything was all right. She stood at a polite distance, her hands folded gently in front of her. "Is the food okay?" she asked in her soft tone. Rayhan nodded. "Yes, it's good." But Lena answered before he could finish. "It's just fine," she said in a dismissive voice, as if the word fine were an insult. "But you didn't check on us for a while." Isla knew she had checked on them more often than most tables. She had been close by, watching quietly to make sure they needed nothing. But she didn't argue. "My apologies," she said. "Would you like anything now?" Lena leaned forward with a spark in her eyes, one that suggested she had been waiting for this moment. "You know," she said loudly enough for several tables around them to hear, "good service means being attentive, not wandering around chatting with other customers." A few people nearby raised their heads. They had seen Isla doing her job, not wandering, not neglecting anything. But no one interrupted. Isla felt the sting of the words, though she did not show it. "I'm sorry if it felt that way," she replied softly. "I try to balance all the tables fairly." "Fairly," Lena repeated with a laugh. "Oh, don't talk about fairness. You just focus on whoever gives you big tips, right?" Rayhan's eyes widened slightly. "Lena," but before he could finish, Lena lifted her hand. "No, let her answer," she insisted. "Isn't that how it is? Or am I wrong?" Isla didn't raise her voice. She didn't defend herself with pride. She simply spoke the truth. "I treat everyone the same," she said. "It doesn't matter who leaves a big tip or who doesn't. I'm just here to give good service." Lena leaned back with a dramatic sigh. "Well, you're not doing a great job." This time the room grew even quieter. Some customers seemed ready to step in. Others whispered softly to one another. Everyone could tell the waitress was being pushed beyond what was normal. One of the new servers, a young boy barely in his 20s, watched with clenched fists. He whispered to another worker, "I should go over there. She doesn't deserve this." But the other worker shook their head. "She'll handle it. She always does." Isla's calmness wasn't weakness. It was strength, the kind of strength most people didn't understand until they saw it up close. Still standing by the table, she asked gently, "Is there anything I can bring for you now?" Lena smirked. "Yes, bring me a new drink. This one tastes flat." Isla reached for the glass. She lifted it slightly to check. It was untouched, completely full. But she didn't say anything. She only nodded. "I'll bring a fresh one." She turned to leave, but before she could take a step, Lena said something that made the room freeze. "You know," she said loudly, "you have the slowest walk I've ever seen. Do you think moving faster is too much for you?" A slow breath slipped from Isla's chest. She didn't let it show on her face, but it stung. Not because of the insult, but because of the intention behind it, the desire to belittle, to diminish, to make someone feel small. A customer sitting at a nearby table shook his head. "This is too much," he whispered to his wife. "Someone should say something." But Isla gently lowered her gaze and said, "I'll bring your drink right away." When she walked back to the kitchen, the staff looked at her with heavy expressions. One of the cooks said, "You shouldn't have to deal with this." "It's part of the job," Isla said softly. "Some days are harder than others." The cook shook his head. "Not like this." As Isla prepared the drink, she paused for a moment. She placed both hands on the counter and closed her eyes gently. Not to cry, not to break, but to breathe, to return to herself. She had learned long ago that staying calm came from choosing to stay calm, not from pretending nothing hurt. When she opened her eyes again, she felt steady. She picked up the drink and carried it to the table. But before she could place it down, Lena moved her chair abruptly, causing the drink to spill slightly inside the glass. Not on her clothes, not on the table, just a small shake. Still, Lena gasped dramatically. "Oh, look," she said loudly. "She can't even carry a drink properly." This time, even people at the far end of the restaurant heard it. Conversations paused. A few forks froze midair. Rayhan put his hand on the table. "That's enough," he said quietly, but his voice carried weight. Lena looked at him in surprise. "What? I'm just being honest." Rayhan shook his head. "You're being unkind." Lena blinked, stunned that he had called her out. "Unkind?" she repeated. "I'm the customer. I can speak however I want." Isla set the drink down gently. Her voice was soft but firm. "I'll give you a moment," she said. She stepped away, but something in her heart felt heavier than before. She had dealt with rude customers in the past, but today felt different. Maybe because this was happening in front of someone she once trusted completely. Someone she still cared about deeply. Someone who, for the sake of privacy and business, had distanced himself from her in public. Rayhan watched her walk away with guilt tightening in his chest. He didn't want to hurt Isla. He never did. But today he felt like he was failing her. And Lena wasn't done. Not yet. She turned her head toward Isla's back and spoke loudly, her voice sharp and careless. "I swear, some people should not be working in places like this." A woman at a nearby table turned and frowned. "Why?" she asked quietly but firmly. Lena blinked, surprised that someone challenged her. "Because she's slow and careless." The woman shook her head. "I've been watching her. She's not careless at all." A few people nodded. It gave Isla a quiet, unseen comfort. But Lena wasn't the type to back down. "Well, maybe I just have higher standards," she said with a cold smile. "People like her should stick to simple jobs." Those words floated through the air like a small crack that warned of a bigger break coming. Isla heard the words even from across the room. She paused mid-step. She didn't turn around. She didn't react. But inside her heart, something shifted. Something deep, something quiet, something that had been patient all morning. She knew now this wasn't just about rude behavior. It was about respect, about dignity, about how far someone would go when they believed no one important was watching. And while Lena had no idea who she was speaking to, the moment was getting closer when she would learn the truth. But Isla wasn't planning to reveal anything out of anger. She just wanted people to see the difference between someone who held power through money and someone who held power through character. The breaking point was coming. The room felt it. Even Lena felt it, though she didn't understand why. And soon, the truth would no longer stay quiet. The tension in the restaurant had grown thicker with every passing minute. Customers who had been quietly enjoying their meals were now watching the corner table with subtle curiosity. Whispers passed from one table to another. Some were barely audible, others were spoken loud enough to carry. Everyone could sense that something unusual was happening. Isla moved calmly among the tables, refilling drinks, clearing plates, and offering small smiles. Her face showed no trace of anger or embarrassment, only a steady warmth that made people trust her instantly. Yet inside, she felt a deep patience, knowing the moment of truth was approaching. She didn't rush it. She didn't need to. People revealed themselves in time, and today, Lena was about to reveal everything about herself. Lena had grown restless, tapping her fingers on the table again. She had not expected anyone to question her or even think about her behavior. She thrived on being the center of attention, and until now, everyone had remained silent or politely stepped back. But a few minutes ago, she had noticed some glances and whispers, and it made her frown. The thought that people might judge her unsettled her. She wanted to remain in control, to dominate the space with her words and gestures. Rayhan noticed Lena's increasing agitation. He had tried to keep things calm, but he also knew that her words had crossed a line. He saw the weight of the room pressing down on Isla and on everyone who had witnessed the exchange. Something needed to change before the situation became unbearable. Isla approached the table once more, carrying a fresh glass of water. Lena took it and barely nodded, still searching for another way to assert herself. "You know," Lena said suddenly, I don't understand how someone like you can work here without being rude, without complaining. Isla looked at her calmly. I try to focus on the job, she said softly, and treat everyone fairly. Lena's lips curled into a small, sharp smile. Fairly? I doubt you understand fairness. You probably think being polite will get you ahead. But in the real world, that doesn't work. At that moment, something in Isla's eyes shifted, though her expression remained gentle. It was subtle, but Rayhan noticed it immediately. He had seen that quiet strength many times before, but he knew that the moment had come when Lena's arrogance would meet a reality she had never expected. Isla stepped back slightly, motioning for a manager who had been nearby. The staff noticed her signal, understanding it wasn't about service but about something more important. The manager approached with polite urgency. Is everything all right here? He asked, keeping his tone calm. Lena's eyes narrowed. Yes, everything is fine. Why are you interrupting? Isla spoke softly but firmly. I think it's time you meet the real owner of this restaurant. Lena blinked in surprise. Excuse me? Isla didn't raise her voice. She just smiled gently. I am the owner, and I also happen to be legally married to Mr. Rayhan. For a moment, the restaurant seemed to freeze. Rayhan's eyes widened. He had not expected Isla to reveal it like this, but seeing her face, calm and confident, he realized that it was the right moment. The air was filled with a heavy silence, the kind that makes people hold their breath. Lena's mouth opened slightly, and then closed again. She looked around the restaurant, suddenly aware of the small crowd that had gathered, waiting for something to happen. People were whispering to one another, their phones discreetly recording the moment. You? Lena said, her voice barely audible. You're the owner? Yes, Isla replied calmly, and I have been quietly overseeing everything while still working alongside my staff. Lena's face turned pale. She looked at Rayhan, her confidence slipping for the first time. But I thought, she stammered. Rayhan cleared his throat. Lena, she is the owner, and she is my wife. The words hung in the air like a sudden storm. Lena's hands trembled slightly as she realized the full weight of what she had said and done. All the insults, all the dismissive gestures, all the careless remarks. She had directed them at someone far more important than she could have imagined. The staff around the table exchanged quiet, relieved glances. They had always known Isla was strong, but this moment confirmed it for everyone present. Customers whispered in awe, impressed by her composure and dignity. Some quietly recorded videos on their phones, sensing that what they were witnessing was extraordinary. Isla took a step closer, her voice gentle but clear. It isn't about anger, she said. It isn't about revenge. It's about respect. Respect is something that cannot be demanded with money or status. It is earned through character. Lena could barely respond. Her hands fidgeted nervously on the table. For the first time that day, she was confronted by the reality that her words had consequences. The confidence that had filled her since the moment she entered the restaurant now wavered. Rayhan reached out and took Isla's hand, holding it gently. I am sorry you had to go through that, he said quietly. I should have stopped her sooner. Isla shook her head slightly. It's okay, she said. Some lessons need to be learned the hard way. Today is hers. Lena's voice finally broke through, weak and uncertain. I didn't know. Isla met her eyes, calm and unwavering. You should never insult someone without understanding who they are, she said softly. And you should never assume someone is beneath you. Power doesn't come from wealth or appearances. It comes from how you treat people. The words sank into Lena's mind. She realized painfully that everything she had believed about her control, her status, her ability to dominate, had been an illusion. She had misjudged the very person she thought was insignificant, and in doing so, she had exposed herself. The restaurant seemed to breathe again as Isla turned and motioned to the staff to continue their work. The moment of confrontation had passed, and yet its impact remained. People whispered quietly to one another, impressed not only by the revelation but also by the grace with which Isla handled it. Rayhan leaned closer to Isla, his voice low and full of relief. "Thank you," he said, "for everything. For staying calm. For teaching the lesson without harsh words." Isla smiled gently. "Sometimes patience and dignity are stronger than any loud argument or dramatic display," she replied. Lena sat frozen, unsure what to do next. The staff looked at her silently, some with quiet judgment, some with relief that the ordeal had come to an end. She wanted to apologize, but the words felt heavy, forced, and insufficient. For the first time in her life, she understood what it meant to be on the other side of someone's strength. Isla walked back to her station, quietly returning to the rhythm of her work. She didn't linger on the confrontation. She had made her point. She had shown that respect was not a choice given lightly, and that true strength came from character, not money or beauty. Rayhan sat with a quiet smile, watching Isla move through the restaurant. He had never admired her more. Not for her role as his partner, not for her intelligence, but for the way she carried herself in a world that often judged too quickly and spoke too harshly. Lena finally muttered a quiet, broken apology, barely audible. I'm sorry." Isla didn't respond immediately. She simply nodded once, a gesture that acknowledged the apology without needing to make a show of forgiveness. The lesson had been learned. The words had been heard. The restaurant slowly returned to its normal pace. Customers resumed their conversations, some still glancing occasionally at the table where the drama had unfolded. The staff moved more confidently now, feeling reassured by the presence of someone who valued their dignity and their work. And though the moment had been tense, there was an unmistakable sense of peace settling over the room. Respect had been restored. Power had been redefined. And Isla had quietly, gracefully reminded everyone present that true strength was not shown in loud words or public displays, but in calmness, patience, and the courage to do what was right, even when it was difficult. As Isla continued her work, a few staff members whispered to one another, smiling. "She really is something else," one said softly. "Yes," another replied. "She teaches more in a moment than most people do in a lifetime." Isla overheard the whispers but didn't respond. She didn't need to. She had made her point, and sometimes the quietest gestures spoke louder than words ever could. The day had changed, not only for Lena but for everyone in the restaurant. And while the meals continued to be served and the customers came and went, the lesson lingered. Respect was earned, dignity was unshakable, and the quiet strength of character could never be underestimated. Even Rayhan knew that today would be remembered for a long time, not as a day of shame but as a day of truth. And for Isla, it was just another moment of doing what she believed in, living with grace, patience, and integrity, no matter who watched or judged. The restaurant slowly returned to its usual rhythm after the confrontation. Customers resumed their conversations, servers moved more confidently, and the subtle tension that had hung in the air seemed to dissolve like mist in the morning sun. Yet the events of the day had left an invisible mark on everyone present. People whispered softly, sharing their impressions, while others discreetly replayed moments they had quietly recorded. Isla moved among the tables with her usual calm and gentle energy. She refilled water, cleared empty plates, and offered smiles to the diners. Everything looked as if nothing unusual had happened. Yet inside, she felt a quiet satisfaction. Not for revenge or recognition, but because she had witnessed the truth being revealed. Respect had been restored in a way that words alone could never achieve. Rayhan remained at the corner table, observing Isla as she worked. He felt a mixture of awe and gratitude. He had known all along that Isla was strong, that she carried herself with dignity and fairness, but seeing her handle the confrontation so gracefully in public filled him with admiration he could barely put into words. He had always loved her intelligence, her kindness, and her patience, but today had shown a deeper side, an unshakable strength that made him respect her in a way he had never fully appreciated before. Lena sat at the table, still pale, her posture stiff. She had withdrawn into herself, as if trying to process the reality that had just unfolded. She wanted to apologize again, to explain her behavior, but she didn't know where to begin. The arrogance that had carried her through so many moments before was gone, replaced by an awkward vulnerability she had never felt in public. For the first time, she realized that words could hurt in ways that no charm, money, or beauty could fix. Finally, after a long silence, Lena muttered, I'm sorry. I didn't know." Her voice was barely audible, but it carried a note of sincerity that had been missing before. Isla paused briefly in her work and turned to look at her. Her expression was calm, soft, and forgiving though firm. "I hear your apology," she said gently. "What matters now is understanding. Understanding that respect is not optional. It is the foundation of every human interaction." Lena lowered her eyes, swallowing hard. She nodded slowly, realizing how far she had been from that understanding. For the first time, she truly saw the impact of her words, not just on Isla but on the staff, the customers, and even on Rayhan. She had thought her comments were harmless, just a part of asserting herself. But now, she realized how much damage careless words could do, especially when aimed at someone who carried themselves with quiet dignity. Rayhan reached out across the table and gently took Isla's hand. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything, for being patient, for teaching a lesson, for showing grace when it could have been easy to lose it." Isla gave him a small, reassuring smile. "It wasn't about showing power or winning," she replied softly. "It was about making sure that truth was seen, that character mattered more than appearances or wealth." The staff had watched everything unfold. Some of them whispered to one another, amazed at Isla's calm strength. Others glanced at Lena with expressions that mixed relief and quiet judgment. The air was lighter now, filled with an unspoken lesson that would linger long after the lunch hour ended. Lena finally looked up, her voice still trembling. I didn't think about how it would feel to be spoken to like that, to be looked down upon. I see now. I acted selfishly." Isla nodded gently. "The important thing is that you understand. People may forgive words, but they will never forget the respect you show them. And it's never too late to learn how to treat others with dignity." Lena stayed silent for a long moment, absorbing the weight of the lesson. She had been humbled in a way she had never expected. The realization settled over her quietly. She had misjudged someone she thought was beneath her, and in doing so, she had exposed herself. Rayhan reached out to Isla again, this time with a quiet strength in his tone. "I think today changed more than just one person," he said. "It reminded everyone here what really matters. And I'm proud of you, not just as my partner, but as the person who leads with integrity." Isla smiled softly, feeling the warmth of his words. "Thank you," she said, "but the lesson isn't mine alone. It belongs to everyone who witnessed it. To the staff, the customers, and even those who think respect can be bought with wealth." The staff, encouraged by Isla's words, moved with renewed confidence. They served each table with gentle attention, shared smiles, and an energy that made the restaurant feel welcoming and safe. The earlier tension had given way to a renewed sense of harmony, as if everyone had learned a small but valuable truth about dignity, patience, and human connection. Lena finally rose from her seat, still hesitant but determined to act correctly. She approached Isla quietly. I want to apologize properly," she said. "Not because someone told me to, but because I understand now. I treated you unfairly, and I'm sorry." Isla regarded her silently for a moment. She could see the sincerity in Lena's eyes. She nodded once, a simple gesture that carried both acknowledgement and forgiveness. "Thank you," Isla said. "The best way to move forward is to treat others with respect. Everything else will follow naturally." Lena lowered her head, clearly humbled, and returned to her seat. She sat quietly, reflecting on the morning and realizing that lessons of character were far more important than wealth or appearances. The arrogance that had once guided her words and actions had been replaced by quiet introspection. Rayhan reached out again, squeezing Isla's hand lightly. "I can't tell you how much I admire you," he said softly. "Not just for handling everything today, but for the way you live. You lead by example, and that's rare." Isla smiled gently. "It's not about admiration," she said. "It's about living honestly, treating people fairly, and showing that kindness and patience are never weaknesses. They are strengths." As the afternoon wore on, the restaurant slowly returned to its regular pace. Customers enjoyed their meals, laughed quietly, and went about their day. Yet the memory of the confrontation and its resolution lingered in the air. It wasn't about scandal or drama. It was about a lesson in respect, patience, and character that everyone present would carry with them long after the meals were finished. Isla returned to the kitchen for a brief moment, speaking softly with the chef and other staff members. "Thank you for handling everything with care," she said. "It means a lot that we all stay united, no matter what happens in the dining room." The staff nodded, grateful not only for her leadership but for the way she had preserved the dignity of everyone involved. Her quiet strength had reminded them that respect was earned through character, not authority or money. Meanwhile, Lena watched from her seat, still humbled. She realized that the world wasn't about asserting dominance over others. It was about understanding, patience, and treating people with fairness. The arrogance that had guided her all morning had vanished, replaced by a quiet recognition of her mistakes. Finally, she stood, approached Isla once more, and said softly, "I promise to do better, not because I have to, but because I want to. Thank you for showing me how to see things differently." Isla nodded gently. "That's all anyone can ever do. Learn and try to be better." Rayhan watched the interaction with a mixture of relief and admiration. He knew that Lena's lesson had been learned. He also knew that Isla's calm patience and unwavering dignity had not only protected the restaurant and its staff, but had also reminded everyone present that true strength and power come from character, not wealth or status. As the day drew to a close, the staff gathered briefly to share quiet words of encouragement. "She handled everything perfectly," one whispered. "I don't think anyone else could have done it." Isla simply smiled, feeling quietly satisfied. "We all have the ability to choose patience and integrity," she said. "Today was a reminder, for all of us." Rayhan stayed close to her, feeling a renewed sense of respect and love. He knew that she was not only his partner in life but also the person who shaped the restaurant, led the staff, and quietly taught lessons that went far beyond the dining room. As Lena left the restaurant, she looked back once, a thoughtful expression on her face. She had learned something she would not forget. Humility, respect, and the quiet strength of character were lessons she had never expected to learn so publicly, but they would stay with her for the rest of her life. Isla continued her work, moving gracefully among the tables, tending to her staff, and ensuring that every customer felt welcomed and respected. The lesson of the day had been powerful, but she carried it quietly, without need for recognition. She had shown that true strength is measured not by money or status, but by how one treats others, and by the calm dignity with which one faces unfairness. The day ended with a peaceful atmosphere in the restaurant. Customers left with smiles, staff felt inspired, and even Rayhan felt a deeper connection to Isla than ever before. Lena's lesson had been learned, and the story of patience, respect, and character lingered quietly in the hearts of everyone who had witnessed it. And for Isla, it was simply another day of living with grace, integrity, and quiet strength, teaching by example, and showing that dignity and respect are the most powerful forces in any human interaction.